Most owners think that revenue problems are sales problems, and in reality, they're coordination problems. I've got David Hori on from Topline Operators, and David, thanks so much for stopping by and checking in with us here.
Oh man, it's such a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited for this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me, David, what exactly are you guys doing specifically, and how are you at Topline Ops really helping provide value for your clients and your customers?
Yeah, so Topline Operators was born out of a business that I was a part of that exited via acquisition. We were bought by Toyota. And coming out of that, I realized that it was a tremendous opportunity to go build for somebody else and execute on their vision and dream. But I wanted to do it for myself. And that was the birthplace and origin story of Topline Operators. And so for the last couple of years, my focus is on buying local Main Street businesses, that create tremendous value for society, their local economies, their community profit, jobs, opportunities within those communities. And, that's my focus, is buying, great businesses and continuing those owners' legacies.
So from your seat, where do you see revenue actually breaking first? Sales, marketing, or would you say it's operations? What's the key critical one for you?
I have a strong bias. My background originated in HR. And so if you give me a problem and I start doing root cause analysis, 9 times out of 10, I conclude you have a people problem. But given your question, it's a people and process problem usually is really the key. And I don't think most people really understand what is impacting their bottom line. There's a lot going on underneath the hood that there's this that's not intentional, on purpose, is forgotten, that's really worth looking at to unlock, sales, revenue, growth, all of that.
I think that's really relevant, especially today, because I see a lot of these clients of ours even that they're coming from a position of they've built the business, they know how to run the business, and let's be honest, they're getting older. Time doesn't stop for anyone. And so now they're left with that dilemma of, okay, how do I find that exit point as a business owner? And so it kind of sounds
Mm-hmm.
like that's really a good fit for what you guys do. You guys, and I would imagine there's some qualifications for it, but there's there's really a good exit plan that probably not a lot of people are aware of. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah. What I found is that this is totally, a topic that a lot of people, I think, are almost reticent to admit that they don't know anything about, which, how would you know about selling a business? It's not something that happens for most people more than once in a lifetime. And you kind of just stumble through it. But there are frameworks that you can use. There are things, that can help remove any kind of valuation surprises and walk you in a really measured, controlled manner to exiting, that I find, education is a big piece of what I do, and just kind of sharing, what to expect. Here's what informs that number. Here's the things that you can do, to help me give you a better offer for your business. And so a lot of education, around valuation, what drives that, how to set up your team for success after you start, either extricating yourself from the business or you leave entirely.
A lot of business owners, they think probably that it's more just, hey, put a sign in the ground type of a mentality of put it up for sale and somebody's going to give me an offer and that's it. But it sounds like there's a lot more to do it right. There is a lot more upfront prep work and things like that that really need to happen. How far out from the actual transfer of ownership would you say somebody should start looking at getting these things tightened up?
Yeah, I think the answer is it's annoying, but it depends. And it depends on if they're utilizing somebody like you and your expertise, in their development, or not. There are some businesses that could sell at any given point. Now, if you're, say, your retirement hinges on that sale price, then you're probably going to want to or need to put some key things in place that may take a year, 2 years, up to 3 years. I think 3 years would be a really great runway for a company that isn't well positioned to sell, to have some really great data to highlight in a valuation report. Really, a lot of lenders, investors, etc., tend to look at 3 years of financial performance, and so you want to help them connect those dots with the performance of your business.
3 years is kind of the litmus test to really prove what that ultimate valuation is. So if somebody's planning on, oh, I need this much money from the business, this is what I'm counting on, then really it's a 3 year, optimally a 3 year runway to be able to patch all the leaks and to be able to really get everything streamlined so they can transition out, basically.
I would say, yeah, 3 years is kind of the outside limit of what, like if you're starting with something that's totally in chaos, you probably need 3 years to really get that trend line going in a conclusive manner.
Yeah, no, and that makes sense. So now when a company says, that they are thinking about selling and things like that, and you look at the front end of the revenue, where the revenue is coming in from, and it's not really as profitable when everything's all paid and said and done as they first thought it would be. What typically do you see as that big gaping hole in reality from what they think is actually happening in the business?
I think people confuse, the value they get as a business owner with the value that somebody else is going to see in their business. And there are a lot of benefits that you're probably well aware of to owning a business. And that doesn't necessarily transition to the next owner. One thing that comes up in a lot of conversations is like, well, I want to sell to you, but I want to keep my health insurance, right? Like there are things that you can do to kind of work around those parameters or needs. And there's always a way, but that's not really that realistic. Some of the things that tend to eat away at profits in a surprising way, certainly payroll, especially if you have a large contingency of people that work hourly. So there's overtime, there's spikes in seasonality, those kinds of things where you're like, well, we're really busy, but we're also moving a lot of projects along. That can really eat into profit margin a lot. Estimation, and coming back to one of my experiences in growing a trade related business, is one where, great, it was profitable. So you move on. Well, it was profitable by a fingernail, right? Like literally there's some unforeseen expenses. We opened up a wall and found that, so that could almost nearly erase, or a bad job or two could erase the profitability of 10, 12 great projects. So, and then there's, the longer we go into the age of AI technology, there's a lot of little tools that employees will add on that are seemingly innocuous, but they can really add up to an alarming monthly spend.
Just because a business is busy doesn't mean they're profitable.
Yeah, you're dead on.
So what usually, when you go to look at this operation with a new company, let's say it's a home services company that's watching this for the first time, where do you really get started with them most times? What's the normal key point for you?
Well, my first conversation is designed to be as unassuming as possible. Like, I think people have anxiety around like talking about selling their business. And when I meet with an owner for the first time, the number one thing I'm really looking to understand is like, what's the story? Like, how did this get started? Like, I love stories. And so I'm like pulling up my chair, sitting on the edge of my seat. I was like, how did this get started? Are you like a serial entrepreneur? You got just a bunch of projects going on, or is this your one and only? Like, oh, you've been there, done that, and I just want to understand that whole narrative. After that, again, every buyer is going to be different, but I'm looking to understand, what does life look like after you sell? Have you thought about that? Is your identity
Hmm.
like really tied up in the business? And this is like something where like you're going to be really concerned about your customers or your employees or the brand. And is this like a major legacy thing for you? Or is this just kind of like a means to an end where, you know, my family's always been in carpentry. I like carpentry. I'm in the business and this is my retirement plan now. And so then once I have those kind of foundational understandings, now we can start talking about, well, what's been kind of the historical trends financially for your business, and tell me about the key people in your team, and starting to unearth those kinds of things.
A lot of it is very polarized. It's either one or the other. It's either they just want out, or they really, I find a lot of them care more about the team and the people that they've built, which is what I love, is when they really have a leadership and legacy mentality, that they care very much about everybody involved in the operation. And so that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. That's why top line operators exist, because they're, you know, if you don't care that much about your legacy and employees, there are tons of buyers out there that'll take your business, bundle it up with a bunch of others and resell it to somebody else, you know, cut the extra employees and all of that. And I really think that that's a mistake and kind of a short-sighted path to business. I want to continue to nurture that legacy. I want to develop the people. I want to create meaningful opportunities for them. And so I've been called anti-private equity. I'm not anti-private equity, for the record. I'm not anti-private equity, but I tend to kind of be positioned on the other end of the spectrum from private equity.
When somebody's selling, are you more interested in how it would make sense for you personally, or are you trying to tee it up and line it up for eventually for another buyer? I mean, how does that work with top line ops?
Yeah. Great question. Again, I tend to be different from many other players in the space because I do want to buy the business and then hold on to it and continue to grow it in a really systematic, sustainable manner. So I'm really just focused on, do I have good bones in the company that I can build on and build on for not just a year or two till I sell it, for decades? That's what I'm looking at. Now, you know, an exit, a possibility? It's always a possibility of selling it to somebody else where that makes sense, where, you know, we were in a space that, is no longer going to be a part of our focus or something like that. That's always a possibility. But my goal isn't to sell. And if I'm doing the things that are foundationally sound to grow a business, it's going to be immensely valuable to the next buyer. And that's the philosophy that I bring.
That's good to hear, because I talk to a lot of people that they talk to traditional business brokerages and brokers, and that there's really not that level of specificity and that level of care. You're treating it almost like a stewardship, which is really kind of refreshing, to be honest.
I love that word.
Yeah. So where do you see, when you start making that transition, where do you see the biggest bottlenecks in the business, typically from an owner's standpoint? What do you see the owners kind of blocking inadvertently or standing in the way of being able to let go of the business?
Yeah. So no surprise probably to you, but I find the business owner is most often the bottleneck. And it's not just their time and energy. Sometimes it's their experience as well, where they've taken the company to the ceiling of what they know to execute on, and they need an entirely new playbook in order to break through that ceiling. And that's something that, you know, you can hire somebody to come into your company as an employee or a senior level leader. You can go find a coach, you can get a mentor. All those kinds of things will help you break through that ceiling. So sometimes there's an experience bottleneck that I don't think is talked about very often, that the best business owners can admit, like, hey, look, I've done what I can. I've tried what I know, and this is where we're at. I was just actually talking with a business owner last week, who's like, I've never broken through the $3 million revenue ceiling. That's okay. Just don't stay stuck there. If you really do want to break through that, there's options available to you. Obviously time though is usually the one that's like when I'm looking at a business, the owner has gotten to where they are because they work more and more hours, do more and more things. And they're this connective glue that holds all these people together in their business, that constantly feed back into them for decisions, for context, for approvals. And, that's usually the most common.
Yeah, we see that a lot where it's kind of almost that hero mentality or that thought process of I'm the only one that can do it this way or know exactly what needs to be done. And so if there's not really any training for that, it's all just tribal knowledge almost.
Tribal knowledge is a great description for it. Like making that intuitive information readily available to others, but then also entrusting them to use that well, are two kind of big hurdles that, the best business owners have to face head on at some point.
Yeah. And that's what we see here because a lot of the owners, they feel like they're stuck in the truck because they're the only ones that can solve these key issues and problems. And then we talk to them and they're telling us, well, if I teach these people what I know, then I'm basically I'm no longer necessary. I'm out of the job. And at some point you kind of have to come back to it and say, okay, that's kind of the point of what we're doing here. We're packaging this up to either be able to scale it and grow it without you having to put more hours in, or you're going to scale it and then sell it to somebody that can pick it up and run with it from there and take great care of your company and your people.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll tell you and your audience a secret here. It's not just the business owner in the cab of the truck that struggles with that. Because having worked with 3 different founders to grow their business from, nothing to the point of exit, each of them were tremendously, recognized executives and leaders prior to being a tech founder that had, VC backing. Each of them struggled in some way with that same thing. And all of them had a different path to slowly releasing their hold on the business, on the team, enabling those people to really run with it and then ultimately break through and really scale things.
I love that. And that breakthrough comes at all different points. It sounds like it's not just one key thing then, really.
Yeah. I've seen people that are very measured and methodical and intentional about it. And I've seen people that literally hang on to it to the point where they just literally can't contain it anymore. And it just flies apart. And both work. But, I think taking the measured approach has its advantages for sure.
Yeah. I think for me, and I don't know what you see on it too, but the cost of not addressing those issues up front can be pretty catastrophic, I would say, or pretty stark. Really, what that difference is, if somebody is prepped completely and has a business ready to hand off versus having to go through and do that work up front. I mean, how big a difference are we talking about?
I would say across the boards, it's pretty significant. Most investors, whether it's a giant private equity firm or a Main Street buyer or anyone in between, your local competitor that's looking over the fence at your business and wanting to add to theirs, they're not going to be that willing to give you a lot of money to buy your job. You have to have a business that can exist without you. And, if you were abducted by aliens, it wouldn't be completely in shambles within 3 weeks, right? So that's massively, when I look at a business, there's 3 main drivers, and like the degree that is dependent on an owner is one of those 3 big things. The other being, like how long tenured is your business. And so, Yeah, I can't underscore enough how much investing in enabling your team, your processes and everything to run without you, drives value for your business.
If you were abducted by aliens tomorrow and your business wouldn't last 2 to 3 weeks, let alone 2 to 3 years, would that be something that you're okay with? And if the answer is it wouldn't last 2 to 3 weeks, then the owners that are watching this, they've got really some serious work to do to get that tightened up.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually a question that I use as the thin edge of the wedge to a lot of those conversations to unearth, owner dependency is like, hey, when was the last time, you took 3 weeks off? And some people are like, 3 weeks? Never. And there's people that really love the work and they wouldn't take 3 weeks off even if they could. They just love it. That's what they do. That's their routine. But the majority of them couldn't. And that's where you want that optionality is where I could. And it was, I do that every year, right? Just take 3 weeks off or whatever. So
In your experience, what changes if we're talking to an owner sitting here watching this and they realize, holy cow, I've got to deal with this issue because I can't just offload everything to my staff. What would you say is their best first step?
I don't know if you've heard this analogy, but if you try to chase two rabbits, you're not going to catch either of those rabbits. And so my advice is usually you need to pick one thing to focus on. And it's usually, what is the owner's biggest pain point? Is it time or is it revenue? And start solving for that immediately. That one thing. You can't do time and revenue. Pick one or the other. And if it's time, there is something that you could implement, something small, something bite-sized today, not next week, not with a bunch of planning, today, that starts to remove something that's like got cognitive load in the back of your brain for you, or you hate doing every week that moves that off your plate. And so my broad advice is pick one and make it bite-sized. This isn't going to be, there's not going to be a single one thing that you implement that just hockey sticks the value of your company. It's going to be a series of small, steady steps usually that really drive value.
That's perfect. I love that. It's that boring continual improvement, not the big dramatic ones. That hits home because a lot of the steps that we take with our clients when they first come on is we take a look at exactly where their biggest profit gaps are and where the easiest fixes are, and we say, okay, we sit down, we agree after the assessment, this is the one thing for the next 30 days we're going to focus on. We're not going to hire more people around it. We're not going to throw other systems in the mix. We're going to just focus on building a rule, sticking to the rule, and making sure it improves the mark or improves that metric to that mark, and then we improve the next and the next. So that I love that because that just dovetails right in with exactly how we operate here.
No, I just think that I love your approach, not just because it is strategically sound and tactically sound, but again, I think so many business owners get overwhelmed with the sheer volume of things that they feel like needs to change. And to help them be successful, you just got to break it into bite-sized pieces. And, you'll be surprised when you do that one step at a time, when you look back and you're like, I don't even recognize myself, my business. And, when I see people go off the rails, it's often not because they don't know what to do, but they're trying to do too many different things. And it's like, the shiny object syndrome, I want to improve revenue, and I also want to, improve retention. And I also want to, and they get nothing done. So you're dead on. I love hearing other people, helping business owners take those steps.
Most entrepreneurs, they're serial fixers. They love to find the problem and fix the problem. And their brain goes 20 million directions at once, and it's, God bless them, that's the best, that's the mindset of an entrepreneur. But that's still, you have to be able to focus it and sideline all the other things to make sure they don't get forgotten. But we narrow it down to that one metric and do that, and then go to the next. So yeah. Perfect. What other things, I mean, what other things would you say are key or critical that we should be sharing with these owner operators that are thinking about making that exit in the next, say, I don't know, 3 to 5 years or maybe less? What would you say is important to know?
One of the things that I know a business owner worries a lot about when they start thinking about exiting is the team going to feel abandoned?
Mm,
And the best thing that you can do to circumvent that, yes, there's always going to be loss. They joined because they want to work with you, for you. And there's something that's working really well there that keeps them sticking around, and disrupting that is going to be, there's going to be discomfort around change, period. But when you implement systems and processes for those people to follow and start removing yourself again from the decision making, or being the person that owns all the information, that becomes a lot less painful for your team. So while it feels like maybe you're giving up control or you're going to be less needed, that's kind of the kindest thing you can do for your team if you know that exiting is going to be in your future. That's going to be the training wheels that keep them on the rails. When you do finally step away, and that could be a graduated step back too, to help make it not like just a day one cutoff, but you've slowly started taking steps back and enabled them to stand on their own, along the way.
I love that because that's more the soft skills of that process that I think a lot of people don't really address. And it's a big part of the decision, because if you make a transition to a new ownership and all of a sudden half your staff run away, that's a huge problem. And I'm sure it's happened.
Absolutely. A lot of the structuring around the valuation of your business often hinges on your employees sticking around to help continue that business. And if they do, even if you come to an agreed, consideration figure for your business, again, a lot of that could be tied to your team sticking around. If they don't, suddenly you're getting a lot less money than you thought.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And so I guess the other thought process behind that is, do you, because I can see it both ways. Do you tell your staff up front that this is a transition that's going to be happening, or is that something you wait until you actually have found the owner and have kind of made that new, or made that ink, first start to happen on the agreements? What are your thoughts around that?
I am a huge proponent of transparency, and the environments that I've thrived in, and I think are truly best in class, have founders and owners who have from day one, or are able to exhibit a tremendous amount of transparency with their team. And instead of seeing your role as shielding your team from bad news or problems, and I'm gonna take all that on myself and keep them focused on the job, that's well intentioned, but actually you're not making the best use of your team, because they have ideas and solutions that you will never think of. And if you entrust them and you have a culture of transparency, you get to harness that ingenuity and their ideas. But that might not be you, and that's okay. And so my advice usually is, like, once you decide to sell, to be consistent. And it would be really alarming if you're like, oh, I've never included brought my employees into the fold. But now I'm going to tell them that I'm going to sell. That's people are going to be reeling. It causes a lot of questions, and that's a risk, even when you have a lot of transparency in your company, but one that I think, can pay out. And certainly, one of the companies that exited while I was a part of it, they did a good job of every week giving an update. It wasn't details. It wasn't who, cause there's some things that people will immediately run away and think like, oh, I could never work for that company, or I don't want anything to do with that. I'm going to better start looking for a job. but highlighting the opportunity. What does this do? These are the kinds of partners we're talking about, and we're excited about these conversations because it unlocks XYZ, and starting to future pace them in that vision and what it could be and the opportunities that they're going to have to develop and grow professionally. That can be really powerful.
I love that. So being the leader and saying, okay, here's what's coming around the bend, and we are thinking about the best overall outcome for the business and everybody involved, not just, hey, I'm out and I get somebody's going to cut me a check and good luck.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, it's going to be something that you've invested in for years already, that you're then continuing on in that messaging.
That's awesome. No, that really is a good thing. So what if somebody were in that position where they're starting to think about exiting and they want to do so with dignity, with some grace, and know it's going to a good potential fit? How can they get a hold of you if they want to reach out to David more about this opportunity possibly?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're watching this, I have included my handle for Instagram. That's where I'm most active. It's at Topline Ops, Topline Ops. And then I'm also easily found on LinkedIn. You can just search for my name, David Hori, Hori. And that's probably the best way. Certainly you can go to toplineops.com and there's information there. And coming soon is going to be a series of webinars to actually help people start to make sense of this and start navigating it and giving them some next steps as well.
Fantastic. And what I'm assuming then, if they follow you on Instagram or LinkedIn, that they'll get the updates there.
Yeah, absolutely. Follow me. If you have questions, reach out. I'm here to help people. And so, if I can send you a framework or send along anything that helps you start taking your next step, that's something that I absolutely will do. Shoot me a DM, drop me an email. I'm here to serve. And that's a great way to start understanding who I am. And I share all of my best stuff on Instagram anyways. So, if you're curious about what that looks like, what's important, what to look out for, that's going to be one of the best places to find it.
Love it. Love it. Well, David, thanks so much for having taking the time to come and be on the show today. I really appreciate it. And yeah, if there's anything else that we can do along the way to help you out, I much appreciate it.
John, this is the first of many conversations for you and me. I'm excited to have had this opportunity, and thank you for sharing your platform with me.
Thanks again. We'll talk soon, David.